It's your girl, Mary J, and today we'll be talking about depression, suicide, and motherhood. Stay tuned. Hey y'all, I want to thank y'all for coming and tuning in for my talk about motherhood and mental health. As you all know, I have a 1-year-old and I am 41. He is the third and final child added to my family. And I just wanted to have a discussion and just talk about some of the challenges that we as mothers face when it comes to mental health. In a lot of African American communities, once upon a time, mental health was a dirty word. In 2022, you can find mental health support. One of the most common areas of mental health is support to mothers. So we're going to get kind of personal tonight. One of the things that I experienced when I was pregnant with my son immediately after I found out was depression. This is a snippet of a message that I sent to my provider while I was pregnant, just informing them that I was at my wit's end, that I was very, very extremely depressed, and I had no idea what to do about it. And luckily, I had a provider who listened to me and who assisted me by increasing my dosage and offering all kinds of supports. Increasing my dosage of antidepressants. I ended up having to go on psychotropic medication to assist me with this low that I was feeling. And when I say low, I was basically feeling like my life was falling apart when everything in all actuality was just fine. But because I was experiencing this prepartum depression, I could not function. It was difficult for me to enjoy my pregnancy. It was difficult for me to enjoy the thing that I had wanted. Now, I was one of those people that they consider high risk for depression because I had previously had depression prior to becoming pregnant. But at the time that I was doing phenomenal. And I had a therapist. Things were just going great. But my serotonin levels plummeted so bad that I had to go on medication. So when I delivered my son, I experienced postpartum depression, which is something that a lot of women go through. A lot of women are already familiar with. It's not something that's new to pregnant women who have children. And when I experienced postpartum depression, I expected it to go away after a certain time, and it never did. What and so in the world is going on? I, at this point, was only experiencing this extreme level of sadness and depression when I would breastfeed. And it was immediate. As soon as my milk let down, my feelings, my thoughts, everything became almost unbearable, like a nightmare. And I hadn't experienced either of my two prior pregnancies. I talked to my therapist about it. I talked to my OBGYN about it. No one could tell me what was happening to me, which made me feel completely isolated. So feeling isolated, feeling completely unsure what was happening to me, I began to do research, and I started to Google depression while breastfeeding, frustration while breastfeeding, anger while breastfeeding, and there's an actual diagnosis for what I had been experiencing. So I screenshotted it and I sent it to my therapist, who told me, sure, the This brought me such a sense of relief to know that what I was experiencing while breastfeeding my son was not unheard of, that it actually happens to a lot of women, and that I was no longer the bad mother. The thing that I have to say that was most disappointing to me is the fact that when I went to my healthcare professional, my doctor, my nurse practitioner who treated me for, they all wanted to prescribe me something. They all wanted to write a prescription. And while prescriptions have their place, they have their proper place, that's not always the answer. And I made it clear in under no uncertain terms that I want to take any medication while breastfeeding. I made my wishes clear. I remember one particular segment of therapy when I was talking to the nurse practitioner who was over my therapist about a specific happened. I can't remember all the details about it, but she said to me, well, if you won't take a prescription to help you through this, then we may have to refer you for inpatient therapy, which is basically getting you admitted or hospitalized. And I was like, wow, so sounds like a threat to me, because I don't want to take a prescription drug. And that really took me back. Took me aback, because why would you abuse your... So needless to say, I am no longer seeing that practitioner, and no, I did not take the prescription. And I did breastfeed for 12 whole months with this condition, untreated. And I would say with my husband, knowing is half the battle. Knowing is half the battle, meaning I know that I have this condition. I know that it will happen every single time. But I know that I'm not crazy. And that made me strong enough to be able to go through these changes more easily, I guess is what I can say. Another thing I wanted to mention about mental health and motherhood is not necessarily being able to explain or describe to your significant other what you're going through. Sure, they may have postpartum depression, they may have heard of baby blues, but they may not really know the ins and outs of what that's like for you. And you can try the best way you know how. However, sometimes it still feels like you fall short in some way, shape, or form for them to be able to understand and empathize what you're going through. And that could be a very lonely place. So with my spouse, he had been in therapy with me in couples counseling, and we had to go through this bumpy road. So we have to give our partners grace when it comes to them trying to understand what we go through as mothers with depression or any type of mental health condition, as well as them trying to assist us. Because sometimes when we are going through a mental health crisis, we don't exactly know how to ask for help or what kind of help we need. And so as a mom, I found it difficult to communicate to my partner, my husband, some of the experiences I was having. However, my therapist was able to help me to gather myself and put everything into words in a way that he could understand. And also our relationship therapist assisted as well, because they too had experience. So now that my son is a year old and we've reached the milestone that I was hoping for with breastfeeding, I would like to start working on my depression, because I still deal with depression. Even the time frame that postpartum depression is supposed to end. I don't necessarily want to take any narcotics. I would like to try to go the herbal route and go through anything unnecessary. So we're going to take it as slow as he wants. he's not ready to stop breastfeeding. And I'll end by saying that under no circumstances am I the expert when it comes to motherhood and mental health. I still struggle daily. I truly am a believer that knowing is half the battle, because when you know that you're dealing with something, it allows you to give yourself, and it allows you to be able to sort of quarterback the thing that you're going through. Like, okay, I know this is going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but when it does, I'll have a game plan. So a couple of weeks ago, I was having premenstrual dysphoric disorder episode, and I knew that my period was coming. I was feeling very out of sorts, and I needed some time alone. I communicated this to my spouse, and he denied me that request. So I waited as long as I could, quietly and gently tried to work through the symptoms, which was mood swings, bloating, depression, exhaustion, anxiety. Now, you guys already know that I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I'm with the baby 24/7, literally. And at that moment, when I asked my husband, could you watch the baby so that I could lie down, he said no. And not only did he say no, he put the baby on the bed beside me and walked away. At that moment, I literally said to myself, I'm leaving. And I did. I packed my bag and I left the baby and my husband right where they were. I went to a very, very nice hotel, had a full Patty's pie and a fork, and I sat in my hotel bed and ate that pie. Now, this is definitely not something that I recommend that you do. I felt an extreme sense of mom guilt leaving the baby, and I felt guilt leaving my husband to tend to the baby. But I knew that at that moment, a health crisis. I knew at that moment that had I not left, I would have done something explosive, like literally clear off the countertop, if you know what I mean. So what I had to do, not what I wanted to do. And the next day I was perfectly fine. I came home. I was no longer in crisis, and I felt so better. However, it shouldn't have ever had to get to that point. I should have had a game plan. So going forward, I know that during that time of the month, I'm going to have a solid game plan so that my husband and I page about my needs, because I needed some alone time. I needed to be able to deal with my physical limits as well as my mental limitations in a safe and supportive space. And my spouse understood, although he didn't necessarily agree what extreme I took it. He understood, and we talked through it, and we were able to come to some understanding. So, the purpose of the video is to encourage you to know that as a mom, you are not alone if you experience any type of mental health condition or any type of mental health crisis. You are absolutely not alone. There's going to be a support number here that you can call if you need to talk to someone right away. I encourage you to seek a support. I have a support group on Meetup, the Meetup app. I also attend a Bible study group of women, and they are an extremely wonderful support for me. And also, I encourage you to seek a mental health support therapist, counselor. Last but not least, I want to let you know that you can get through this. Please have hope. when you experience moments where you feel like you're at the end of your rope, you can't go any further. This is it. Take a break. Take a break, whether it's having an older child watch the baby, or having a relative or a close friend watch the children, or actually hiring children. You deserve a break. It doesn't matter if you have a job or not. It doesn't matter. You deserve a break just like everybody else. Everyone else gets a break. The children get a break when they go to school. The spouse gets a break when they deserve a break too. So don't ever feel guilty for needing that alone time. Don't ever feel ashamed for needing me time. Thank you so much for watching the video. And if something that I said resonated with you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. And also hit the notification bell so that you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again.